Ch54 Everblaze. Convincing the Black Swan turned out to be far easier than convincing Grady to let her go. He had quite a lot to say about Sophie illegally teleporting to a forbidden city when she was already in so much trouble. But eventually he agreed, so long as Sander went with them. A detail he absolutely won't not budge on, no matter how many ways Sophie explained the impossibility of disguising a 7-foot tall goblin from humans. Adeline finally found a solution, turning one of her lacy capes into a shawl and showing Sander how to walk hunched over with a makeshift cane. Anyone who got close would surely notice that he was one buffed out, armadillo looking grandma. But from a distance, he appeared to be a sweet, albeit rather lumpy looking little old lady. Kit laughed for 5 straight minutes when he saw him. Sophie, meanwhile, was battling a major sense of deja vu. Not only had she put on the same jeans and yellow shirt with brown stripes that she'd worn on the day Fitz had permanently taken her away, but Kif had borrowed the dark jacket and jeans Fitz had been wearing. Want me to talk like this? Kif asked, mimicking Fitz's accent almost perfectly. Take my hand, Sophie. Let me show you where you truly belong. That's not what he said, she grumbled, but it wasn't that far off either. And just so you know, the mimicking is totally creepy. I know, right? My mom does it all the time. You should see the way she mimics my dad. It's almost terrifying. That would be. She shook her hands, trying to shake away the nervous energy as she paced her room and checked the sky. It would be sunset in San Diego in less than half an hour. Remember, Foster, we're calling the shots this time. No crazy lips or midnight flights over the ocean or drugged cookies. Just us, asking questions and not letting anyone leave until we get some answers. She nodded, sinking to the floor, not trusting her shaky legs. So what is it? Keith asked, coming to sit beside her. I totally get the nerves and stuff. But he brushed a finger across her palm. What's with all the dread? She took out Jolie's mirrored compact, studying the two different Sophies reflected inside. The Black Swan knows who I am, Keith, not who I was, or who I think I am, who I really am. Keith scooted closer, so close she could see his reflection in the mirrors. Well, we both know I'm not good at the serious, supportive thing, so I may be a jerk for saying this, but when are you going to realize that they can't tell you who you are? Maybe they can tell you a bunch of weird junk about your past and your family, and I get that some of that might be freaky. But if they tell you that your mom is the most open, go-with-the-flow person they've ever known, is that suddenly going to make you stop being so stubborn or keeping so many secrets? I doubt it, Sophie admitted. And what if they told you your dad was an even bigger rule breaker than me? Not that that's possible. Are you suddenly going to start ditching class and pranking Dame Alina or Magnet Lito or whoever our principal is? No. Right. Because our family doesn't decide who we are. We decide who we are. Believe me, it drives my parents crazy. And sometimes that's the only thought that gets me through the day. Sophie closed the compact, tucking it safely in her jeans pocket. Things have been better with your parents, though, haven't they? Yeah, I guess. I don't know. He made his way over to Iggy's cage, rumpling Iggy's orange dreads. Sometimes it feels like they're starting to accept me for me, not turning me into a mini-them. But other times, it's like, Sophie prompted, like I've distracted you long enough. The time has come. He sang the words, fist pumping the air before dragging her and Sander outside to the cliffs. Game face is on, everyone. That goes for you too, Grandma. Channel your inner grumpy old lady. Sander raised his cane like he was considering clubbing Kif over the head with it. Perfect, Kif told him, pulling them closer to the edge. And hey, I just realized, this is your first time teleporting, isn't it, Gigantor? Sander nodded, staring at the crashing waves below. I have a feeling I'm not going to enjoy it. Keith laughed. Don't worry, Foster's got this. The jump is the hardest part. But Keith was wrong. The jump was just the beginning. Mr. Forkle was waiting for them, sitting in the center of his lawn, looking as puffy and wrinkled as ever while he rearranged the remaining garden gnomes into a circular pattern. The scene was so familiar, Sophie almost wondered if they'd gone through space and time. But then she saw the boarded up windows and the overgrown grass and wasn't sure if she was disappointed or relieved. You kids! Mr. Forkle grumbled, starting with his favorite phrase. Late to your own meeting. He pointed to the sky where the last rays of sunlight were sinking below the horizon. Hey, at least we showed up, Kip reminded him. That's more than you can say. Mr. Forkle studied him, his expression both smug and amused. You need not haven't bothered with the costumes. There aren't enough there are enough obscurers here to erase this place from existence. We're the only ones who know we're here. For now, at least. You think the Neverseen will find us? Sophie asked, glancing up and down the street. Neverseen? Mr. Forkles asked. That's the name I found written in runes on the patches of their sleeves. Interesting. He moved two of the gnomes outside the circle and craned his neck to study the sky. And yes, I do expect the rebels to make an appearance, but I also expect them to leave us alone. How can you be so sure? Sander demanded as he threw off his disguise and straightened it to his full height. Because Mr. Forkle tapped the nose of one of the gnomes and the air shivered around him. I just put an impenetrable energy field around us. It'll only last 10 minutes, but that should be enough time. Bet you thought I was just a crazy old man playing with my gnomes. Kinda, Kif admitted. So, the gnomes weren't a code? Sophie asked. They were many things, depending on what I needed. 12 years was a very long time to be separated from my world, and these ridiculous statues were all I had to remind me why I was here. Why were you here? Sophie asked quietly. His eyes met hers, sharp and clear, yet somehow impossibly ancient. You are my greatest achievement, Sophie. There was a softness to the words, a warmth, but the words were still wrong. That's all I am to you? An achievement? What more would you like? She didn't have an answer. I know you have questions, Sophie. Do not expect me to give you all the answers. We haven't the time, and you haven't the stomach. So here's what I can tell you. I chose this house, this place, these people to protect you, nurture you, keep you safe and hidden, and allow you time to become what you needed to be. Of course, I never intended for the rebels, this never seen, to find you when they did. But, oh, don't so sound so surprised, he added when she gasped. Surely you figured most of this out already. How could I? Simple deduction. You really think we would set fires in the shape of our sign just to catch Alden's attention? I guess not, she mumbled. She'd known the Black Swan weren't behind the Everblaze, but hadn't thought much about the first white fires, which had arrived when burning when Fitz arrived. Mr. Forkle sighed, filling the air with the scent of dirty feet, a side effect of his Ruckleberry disguise. Somehow the Neverseen knew you were here. They just didn't know precisely where. So they lit the fires to flush you out, taunting us with their own symbol and framing us in this process. That's when I sent the newspaper article to Alden, the one that led him to you so he could take you away. It was earlier than we'd planned, but I needed to keep you safe, and I thought they'd give up once the eyes of the council were upon you. But obviously, you were wrong, Sophie finished. It happens sometimes, he agreed. Like our last meeting, Kip jumped in. Or were we really your bait? Mr. Forkle became very focused on rearranging his gnomes as he told them. We saw an opportunity to catch some of our enemy and we took it. And it would have worked if Sophie hadn't seen them too early and had Sander chase them away. Well, maybe if you told us what you were planning, Sophie snapped, you would have been willing to sit back pretending nothing was happening while the enemy closed in. I've taken bigger risks, haven't I? She pointed to the star-shaped scar he'd given her. Another of my mistake, he whispered. If I'd understood human medicine better. It doesn't matter, Sophie said, shown by the concern in his voice. My point is, you should have been working with me, not cutting me off, like you have been for the last few weeks. We had our reasons. He pulled a small black bottle from his pocket and uncorked the stopper. We needed to understand how the Neverseen found our ocean base, and we have finally figured out the answer. Hey, what are you looking at me for? Kif asked. Both times the Neverseen tracked Sophie down, she was with you. What about Paris? Sophie reminded him. In the cave. In here. Remember the jogger? Those times were different. They were before we were taking so many precautions, before we realized how far our enemy was willing to go. Ah, that may be, but I didn't betray anyone, Keith argued. I never said you did it intentionally. Mr. Forkel told him as he poured the fine silver dust into his hand. But that doesn't mean you weren't unwittingly responsible. We disabled both of your registry pendants and all of Sanders' trackers before our last meeting, but there was one signal we couldn't remove. He flicked his wrist, showering Kif with the fine gritty powder. Kif coughed and rubbed his eyes, and Sylvie reached forward to help him, but she froze when she noticed Kif's hands. All of his fingers were glowing bright red.